When you understand that self-respect is the real currency in life, everything changes. Most people are under the illusion that money, influence, or appearance are the assets that determine how others treat them. But in reality, those things are only surface level. True value is communicated through how you carry yourself, how you set boundaries, and how you respond when situations test you. When you beg, even if you feel justified in doing so, you are trading in that currency of dignity for a fleeting moment of attention or validation. And that trade is always a losing one because the attention you buy in that way is never genuine. It's bought at the cost of your self-worth. Self-respect is invisible to the eyes, but felt deeply in the energy you project. And it is that energy which determines the kind of relationships, opportunities, and outcomes you attract into your life. When you hold on to your self-respect, you communicate something profound without uttering a word. You declare that you value yourself enough to walk away from anything or anyone that does not match the standard you have set for your life. This is not arrogance. It's not pride. It's the simple recognition that what you tolerate sets the tone for how you will be treated going forward. Every time you choose not to beg, you're telling yourself and the world that you believe in your own worth and that you trust life to bring you the right connections and circumstances without you compromising who you are to get them. The irony is, people can sense when you are desperate. You might not say it out loud, but it leaks through your actions, your tone of voice, and the way you cling to situations. And when desperation is present, it doesn't inspire respect, it repels it. Human nature tends to place higher value on what is rare. And the more you withhold unnecessary pleading, the more others perceive you as someone with rare qualities worth earning. Self-respect keeps you from becoming too easily available in ways that diminish your value. It's not about playing games. It's about maintaining a balance where your presence is appreciated, not taken for granted. Holding on to self-respect is also about having the courage to accept reality. If someone does not want to reciprocate your effort, no amount of chasing will create real desire. If an opportunity passes you by, clinging to it will not reopen the door. You have to see that begging is like handing someone else the pen to write the story of your life. And if they do not have your best interest at heart, they will write you into a background role while you deserve to be the main character. Self-respect means holding your pen firmly and refusing to let go of authorship over your own narrative. There's also a deeper truth. Begging never works in the long run because it undermines the very foundation of respect. You may get what you want in the short term by pleading or convincing, but the dynamic has already been poisoned. The other party will know they hold the power over you, and that imbalance rarely leads to a healthy outcome. When you operate from self-respect, you flip that dynamic not to gain power over others, but to stand in your own power so that any interaction is built on mutual regard rather than dependency. Self-respect is also tied to self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't fear letting go of something or someone because you believe you can handle whatever comes next. People who beg often do so because they are afraid there's nothing better out there, or worse, they think they can't survive without that specific person, opportunity, or situation. That fear is what drains your dignity. The more you grow into a mindset of self-reliance, the less you will feel the urge to lower your standards just to keep something in your life. Another critical aspect is that self-respect sets the tone for how you treat yourself behind closed doors. If you allow yourself to continually compromise your standards in private, for example, by constantly overthinking, replaying scenarios, or justifying poor treatment, it will eventually show in your behavior. People pick up on your internal relationship with yourself, whether they realize it consciously or not. If you carry yourself as someone who honors their own time, their own peace, and their own boundaries, that silent statement becomes louder than any words you could say. When you beg, you're saying to the other person, I need you more than I need myself. And that's the very equation you have to reverse. The truth is, you must always need yourself more. That doesn't mean living in isolation or rejecting love, help, or partnership. It means understanding that your inner stability and peace are non-negotiable. If keeping someone or something requires losing yourself, the cost is too high. This is why self-respect is like currency. It has value only if you refuse to spend it recklessly. People who keep their self-respect tend to be magnetic because they operate from an internal center of value. They don't chase validation. They create it within themselves. This inner security allows them to be selective with their attention and energy. And that selectiveness creates an aura of quiet power. Others may not be able to put it into words, but they will feel it, and it will make them want to show up in a way that matches your level. The act of not begging is not about withholding love or warmth. It's about holding a line. It's about understanding that your presence is already a gift, and you don't have to force anyone to accept it. If they cannot recognize it, that is their loss, not yours. Self-respect allows you to let go without bitterness, because you know that lowering yourself to keep something is never a win. In the end, the people and opportunities meant for you will meet you at your standard, not require you to abandon it. Detachment is not about not caring. It's about caring in a way that's healthy, balanced, and rooted in self-worth. When you chase something or someone, you're sending out a silent message that says, I don't believe I can have this unless I keep pursuing it relentlessly. That message reveals an underlying fear of loss of belief that if you stop pushing, it will disappear. The problem with that energy is it creates tension. pressure, and often drives the very thing you want further away. True detachment is the opposite. It is the quiet confidence that what's meant for you will find its way to you without you having to exhaust yourself proving you're worthy of it. When you operate from a mindset of detachment, you shift into abundance. You begin to believe there's not just one opportunity, one person, or one door that will fulfill you. There are many. Scarcity thinking is what makes people cling so tightly. They believe this is their only shot, their only connection, their only chance at happiness. And in clinging, they squeeze the life out of the moment. Abundance thinking says, it's not this, something better is coming. And that belief creates space for others to approach freely, space for opportunities to unfold naturally, and space for you to stay aligned with your highest standards. Detachment doesn't mean you stop showing up or giving effort. It means you give without gripping. You're present, but you're not desperate. You allow things to develop instead of forcing them. You understand that anything authentic can withstand a little distance, a little pause, and a little silence. This approach removes the anxiety that often comes with chasing. Instead of asking, how can I keep this? You begin to ask, is this even right for me? That's the power of detachment. It shifts the focus from needing to be chosen to choosing for yourself. When you're detached, you naturally radiate calmness, and calmness is attractive. It tells people that you are secure, that you're not relying on them for your identity or your happiness. This is why relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, tend to flourish when there's detachment. It removes the feeling of obligation and allows mutual respect to grow. People feel drawn to those who don't demand constant reassurance or chase for attention because it makes them feel the connection is voluntary, not transactional. Chasing, on the other hand, drains you. It consumes mental space, emotional energy, and often your time. You start bending your own boundaries to maintain proximity to what you're chasing. You start overanalyzing every detail, every interaction, every silence. And in that state, you're no longer acting from self-awareness. You're reacting from fear. Detachment breaks that cycle. It says, I can want this, but I don't need it to feel complete. That's when you regain control over your emotional energy. Another aspect of detachment is trust. Not just trust in others, but trust in the process of life. You start to accept that things don't have to happen on your timetable to be right for you. When you chase, you're essentially trying to rush the process, to bend circumstances to your will. But sometimes what you're chasing isn't ready for you, or you're not ready for it. Detachment allows timing to play its role without you forcing an outcome. It's a more peaceful way of living because it removes the stress of constantly trying to manage or manipulate every variable. In practical terms, detachment is choosing to live your life fully whether or not a certain person calls you back, whether or not a specific opportunity comes through, whether or not the outcome is what you imagine. It's about continuing to invest in yourself, your goals, and your happiness instead of putting your life on hold. This doesn't just make you feel better in the moment. It actually makes you more magnetic to the very things you once thought you had to chase. People and opportunities sense when you are whole on your own, and that wholeness is incredibly compelling. Detachment also protects your self-respect because it stops you from crossing your own boundaries. When you're in a chasing mindset, you'll justify almost anything just to keep the connection alive, sending too many messages, rearranging your life to fit theirs, tolerating treatment you would normally reject. Detachment is the inner voice that says, no matter how much I want this, I will not betray myself to keep it. That stance keeps you aligned with your values, and over time, it trains others to treat you with the respect you deserve. One of the most overlooked benefits of detachment is clarity. When you're chasing, your judgment is clouded by the fear of losing what you want. You ignore red flags, you overvalue small gesture, and you convince yourself that something is right for you simply because you're emotionally invested in it. But when you step back, when you remove that desperate energy, you can actually see the situation for what it is. You can evaluate whether it truly adds value to your life, or whether you're just afraid to let go. The truth is, detachment takes practice. It's not easy to step back when your emotions are deeply involved. But every time you choose to release rather than chase, you reinforce the belief that you can be okay without clinging. And the more you live from that belief, the more you start to notice how often the right things find their way back to you when you stop trying to control them. It's almost paradoxical. The less you chase, the more you receive. Because what's truly meant for you doesn't require you to beg, force, or run after it. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of communication. People are conditioned to believe that if something feels uncertain, the best way to fix it is to talk more, explain more, send more messages, make more calls. They believe that if they can just say the right thing at the right time with the right emotion, they can change someone's mind or fix a situation. But the truth is, when you stop speaking, when you stop filling the space with words, your silence often says what no amount of pleading or convincing ever could. It becomes a statement that is impossible to ignore. When you constantly reach out, you make it easy for others to overlook you. You are always there, always available, always within reach, and human nature tends to devalue what is always at hand. Silence disrupts that pattern. It removes you from their daily rhythm, and in doing so, it forces them to notice your absence. They may not admit it out loud, But the human mind naturally wonders about what it no longer has immediate access to. Your silence creates space for curiosity to grow. It's not about creating curiosity for others. It's about reclaiming your own energy. Every time you stop yourself from sending that extra message, you're practicing self-control. You're choosing to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty rather than rushing to soothe it with impulsive action. That kind of discipline builds inner strength. It tells your mind that you don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. This is one of the quietest yet most powerful ways to build self-respect, because it comes from a decision to honor your own peace over someone else's attention. Silence also communicates boundaries without confrontation. There are times when explaining yourself over and over only dilutes your point. If someone has not understood your worth by now, repeating your case will not suddenly change their perspective. In those moments, silence is not avoidance, it's clarity. It says, I have already said what I needed to say. The rest is up to you. That kind of restraint shows that you know your value and that you're not interested in negotiating it through endless conversation. Another overlooked aspect of silence is that it shifts the emotional responsibility back to the other person. When you keep writing, calling, or explaining, you're carrying all the weight of keeping the connection alive. Silence puts that weight back where it belongs. If they truly care, they will make the effort to bridge the gap. If they don't, their inaction speaks volumes, and you save yourself from wasting more energy on someone unwilling to meet you halfway. Silence also has a way of amplifying presence. Think about the difference between someone who talks constantly and someone who speaks rarely, but with purpose. The latter's words carry more weight because they are not given out cheaply. The same applies to your interactions. When you stop over-communicating, the moments when you do speak or reach out will be valued more. Your voice will carry a certain gravity because it's not drowned out by constant noise. It's important to understand that silence doesn't mean ignoring people out of spite or playing manipulative games. It's about knowing when you've said enough and trusting that you don't need to push further. It's about stepping back and letting the balance of energy in the relationship be restored naturally. In a world where people are constantly bombarded with notifications, calls, and messages, silence can be the most noticeable and powerful thing you can offer. There's also a personal growth element to silence. When you resist the urge to fill the air with words, you give yourself time to think. You create room for reflection, for observing your own emotions, for deciding if what you're chasing is truly what you want. Many people are afraid of silence because it forces them to confront their own thoughts without distraction. But if you can get comfortable with that, you gain a kind of inner stability that makes you far less dependent on external responses. Silence can even repair dignity in situations where words might only make things worse. There are times when speaking in the heat of emotion or out of desperation can lead to saying things you regret or that weaken your position. By staying silent, you give yourself space to cool down, to choose your words carefully if you decide to speak later, and to ensure that when you do, your message comes from a place of strength rather than need. It's also worth noting that silence can be deeply unsettling for those who are used to your constant engagement. If someone has grown accustomed to you always being the first to reach out, your silence will stand out. It will make them reconsider their own behavior. They may start to question whether they've taken you for granted, whether they've matched your effort, or whether they've allowed the connection to slip. And if they truly value you, that realization can be the very thing that prompts them to step up. In the end, silence is not the absence of communication. It's just a different kind of message. It's one that says, well, I value myself enough not to keep knocking on a closed door. It's one that respects your own time and energy while leaving space for others to prove whether they value you enough to close that gap. And it's one of the most effective tools you have for maintaining both your dignity and your peace in any relationship or interaction. Attraction is a natural force. It happens when two energies meet in alignment. It's not about convincing, persuading, or proving. The moment you start trying to make someone see your worth, you shift from attraction to pursuit, and pursuit changes the balance of the relationship. True attraction doesn't require you to constantly remind someone of your value. It's either recognized or it's not. When it's real, there's an effortless pull that doesn't need to be maintained by over-effort. Trying to persuade someone to appreciate you is like trying to sell a product to someone who doesn't believe they need it. You can spend hours listing the benefits, showcasing the features, offering them reasons why it's the best choice. But if they don't want it, your words will not create genuine desire. At best, you'll convince them to take it temporarily, but it won't be because they truly want it. It will be because you pushed hard enough. And anything obtained through persuasion rather than genuine attraction eventually loses its hold. The truth is, when you stop trying to convince people, you free yourself from an exhausting cycle. You no longer have to monitor their reactions, overanalyze their words, or adjust your behavior to keep their interest. Instead, you stand in who you are and allow the right people to be drawn to that without manipulation. This not only preserves your energy, it preserves your dignity. When someone chooses you without needing to be convinced, you can trust that choice more because it came from their own recognition of your worth. Attraction is sustained through authenticity, not performance. When you're constantly persuading, you're often putting on a version of yourself that you think the other person will like. Over time, that becomes exhausting and unsustainable because it's not truly you. But when you're authentic, when you let your real values, personality, and boundaries show, you attract people who actually connect with you as you are. That connection is deeper and more lasting because it's based on truth rather than a curated image. Another powerful element of attraction is space. Just as a flame needs oxygen to grow, attraction needs space to breathe. If you're always calling, always texting, always explaining, you remove the sense of mystery and anticipation that makes people want to lean in. When you stop chasing and instead allow for pauses, you give the other person the opportunity to miss you, to think about you without your constant presence reminding them. This isn't about playing games. It's about respecting the natural rhythm of human connection, which thrives on balance between closeness and distance. You also have to recognize that not everyone is meant to be attracted to you, and that's a good thing. When you accept this, you stop wasting energy on trying to win over people who are simply not aligned to your values, your lifestyle, or your vision. Instead, you put that energy into being the fullest version of yourself, which naturally draws in the ones who are. This is where attraction becomes effortless. You're not trying to appeal to everyone, only to those whose paths are meant to intersect with yours. It's worth noting that attraction is not just about romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, business partnerships, and opportunities as well. In every context, the principle remains the same. The more you focus on embodying your own values and strengths, the more you draw in people and situations that match that frequency. Persuasion might get you temporary agreements, but attraction gets you lasting alignment. When you operate from attraction rather than persuasion, your interactions change. You no longer feel the need to fill every silence with words, to overgive to prove your value, or to compromise your boundaries to keep someone interested. You start to realize that your worth is not up for debate. It's not something to be negotiated in a conversation. It's something that either resonates with someone or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, you let it go without resentment, trusting that what's truly for you will recognize you without you having to argue your case. The most magnetic people are those who are not in a hurry to be chosen. They know their value, and they are willing to wait for someone who sees it on their own. They are not impatient because they trust their own presence and they trust the timing of life. That patience is attractive in itself because it shows security. And security is rare in a world where most people are scrambling for validation. There's also an unspoken confidence that comes from not persuading. When you're in a mindset of attraction, you're essentially saying, I am enough as I am. And if you see it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. That lack of desperation changes how you carry yourself, how you speak, and how you respond. People sense it, and it makes them curious because you're not trying to pull them in. You're simply holding your ground and letting them decide whether they want to step closer. Attraction over persuasion is about trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your value, and trust that the right people will see it without you having to prove it over and over. It's about stepping back from the exhausting chase and realizing that when someone truly recognizes your worth, you won't have to convince them to treat you accordingly. That recognition will come naturally, and when it does, it will feel effortless, mutual, and real. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Yet most people spend it carelessly on things and people that don't give anything meaningful in return. Every message you send, every call you make, every thought you obsess overcosts you energy, and unlike money, you can't just earn it back in an instant. Once it's gone for the day, it's gone. When you chase, beg, or constantly try to keep someone's attention, you are draining yourself of the very fuel you need to grow, create, and live at your best. This is why it's so important to become intentional with where your energy goes. You might think a simple text or a quick call is harmless, but it's not just the act. It's the mental preparation, the emotional investment, and the lingering focus afterward that costs you. If you're checking your phone every few minutes to see if they reply, if you're replaying their last message in your mind, if you're imagining scenarios about what they might say next, your mind is running a constant background process that keeps you distracted from the rest of your life. That's energy you could be using to build yourself up, to pursue your goals, or to engage with people who actually reciprocate your effort. The more energy you waste trying to maintain one-sided connections, the less you have left to pour into yourself. This is why people often feel exhausted and unmotivated after dealing with situations where they have to constantly initiate. It's not just time they're losing, it's vitality. When you redirect that energy inward, something powerful happens. You start to feel lighter, more creative, more motivated. You stop depending on external responses to determine how your day feels, and you begin to generate your own momentum. Energy management also affects how others perceive you. People can sense when someone is overinvested, when their entire mood depends on a single interaction. That kind of energy can feel heavy, even suffocating, and it often pushes people away. On the other hand, when you keep your energy balanced, when you're engaged but not overextended, you come across as centered and confident. That's the kind of presence that draws people instead of pushing them away. It's important to understand that energy is not limitless. You wake up each day with a certain capacity, And how you spend it determines the quality of your experiences. If you use it all up on chasing someone who isn't even trying to meet you halfway, you'll have nothing left for the opportunities and relationships that could actually enrich your life. Think of your energy as a bank account. Would you keep pouring money into a business that never gave you any profit? Then why keep pouring energy into situations that give you nothing in return? The truth is, people respect what requires effort to access. If you're always giving away your attention freely, without any balance, you're teaching others that your energy comes without cost. And when something feels free, it's often undervalued. But when you start protecting your energy, when you choose carefully who gets your time and focus, you change the way others approach you. They begin to realize that if they want your attention, they have to show up in a way that matches your investment. One of the biggest shifts comes when you realize that protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's necessary. The more you hold on to it, the more you can invest it into things that truly matter. You can put it into learning new skills, improving your health, deepening connections with people who value you, or building something that gives you long-term fulfillment. That's energy well spent because it multiplies over time. It doesn't leave you feeling drained. It leaves you feeling stronger. Protecting your energy also means knowing when to walk away. It means recognizing that no matter how much you give, some people will never match your effort. Not because you're not enough, but because they simply aren't in a place to reciprocate. And that's okay. You don't need to convince them, chase them, or keep showing up until they finally see your worth. Your energy is too expensive to be wasted on convincing anyone to value it. When you make the decision to stop overspending your energy on the wrong people or situations, you reclaim control over your life. You no longer feel like you're constantly running on empty, waiting for someone else to refill you. Instead, you become your own source of renewal. You start to notice that when you invest in yourself, you naturally have more to give to the right people. And they will appreciate it because they know it's not given carelessly. The more disciplined you become with your energy, the more selective you will be with your connections. You'll start asking yourself, does this interaction inspire me or drain me? Does this person match my effort or constantly take without giving back? Is this worth the time and focus I could be putting somewhere else? Those questions act as filters, ensuring that you spend your energy where it creates value instead of where it disappears. In the end, your energy is your life force. How you use it shapes your days, your relationships, and your future. The more you protect it, the more you can direct it toward building a life that fulfills you rather than depletes you. When you stop giving it away to those who don't value it, you create space for those who will. And that shift changes everything about the way you live and the way you're treated. Walking away is not a sign of weakness. It's one of the clearest statements of value you can ever make. It says without a single word, I refuse to compromise who I am just to stay connected to something that doesn't align with me. It's easy to stay, to keep trying, to keep bending yourself into smaller and smaller shapes in hopes that something will change. That's what most people do, because the comfort of familiarity often feels safer than the uncertainty of letting go. But walking away requires strength. It means you are willing to step into the unknown rather than stay in a place that is eroding your self-worth. When you choose to walk away, you take back the power that constant begging, chasing, or convincing would otherwise drain from you. You're no longer waiting for someone to give you permission to value yourself. You're deciding that you will not settle for half effort, half respect, or half love. That decision alone changes the way you carry yourself, because it shifts you from a position of dependency to a position of possession. You stop asking, will they choose me? And start declaring, I choose myself. A walking away is not about anger or revenge. It's about clarity. It's recognizing when the cost of staying is higher than the fear of leaving. It's understanding that your energy, time, and emotional health are too valuable to be spent in situations where they are not appreciated or respected. That's why walking away often feels like a release. Not because it's easy, but because deep down you know you are removing yourself from a cycle that was holding you back. There's a quiet dignity in leaving without fanfare. You don't need to announce your worth to the person or situation you're leaving behind. You don't need to give a speech, prove a point, or make them see what they've lost. Your absence will say more than your presence ever could in a place where your value was overlooked. People may not realize what they had while you were there, but your departure creates a void they can't ignore. And whether or not they admit it, that absence will make them reflect. The act of walking away also teaches others how to treat you in the future. If you stay and tolerate disrespect, neglect, or imbalance, you're signaling that it's acceptable. But if you remove yourself, you're showing that you hold yourself to a standard, and you expect that standard to be met. This is not just for the benefit of others. It's for yourself. Every time you honor your boundaries by leaving a situation that doesn't meet them, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. You reinforce the belief that you can trust yourself to protect your own well-being. Walking away is also a test of self-trust. Many people stay in the wrong situations because they're afraid of what will happen if they leave. They imagine being alone, starting over, or not finding something better. But when you walk away, you're placing faith in your ability to handle whatever comes next. You're betting on yourself rather than on the possibility that someone else might change. That act of trust builds resilience And resilience makes you stronger for every future challenge you face. In some cases, walking away can even change the dynamic with the person or situation you left. When you remove yourself, you break the cycle of dependency and force the other side to experience life without you. This can create a shift. Sometimes they realize your value and step up. Other times they fade away completely. Either outcome works in your favor because you've freed yourself from the need to keep proving you've let actions, not words, determine the truth. The power of walking away also lies in the way it redirects your focus. Instead of pouring energy into something that isn't giving back, you can invest it into areas of your life that actually move you forward. You can reconnect with your goals, your passions, and your personal growth. You can rebuild the parts of yourself that may have been neglected while you were trying to make something work. That redirection doesn't just help you heal. It helps you grow into a version of yourself that's even harder to overlook in the future. Walking away is not always about relationships with other people. It can be about leaving behind mindsets, habits, or environments that keep you small. Sometimes the thing you need to walk away from is an old version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserve. When you release that version, you make space for a stronger, wiser, and more confident you to emerge. It's important to remember that walking away is a choice, and choice is power. You are not stuck unless you decide to be. You always have the ability to choose what you allow into your life, and every time you walk away from what doesn't serve you, you make more room for what does. That's not running away. That's moving towards something better, even if you can't see it yet. And while that might be uncomfortable at first, the freedom and self-respect you gain will always outweigh the temporary discomfort of letting go.